Welcome back to Marathon Rack and Cactor. I'm Admin 1 of VinyFX. We are on the very last level, which is kind of an unofficial last level, given that it's more of an Easter egg, if you will, that I found through using the level cheat to check and make sure that I indeed played all the levels. It's called a Motherfucking Spectrum. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a colorscape one, which further drives home the idea that this was the precursor to Marathon Huge in a lot of ways that I didn't notice before, and that probably no one except the primary creators, or I guess clique subjects, if you will, knew about. Yep, sure enough. If I wasn't so lazy, I would bother to put in the Huge Pepper plugin. Might help me too. But anyway, this helped further drive home the lighting techniques here. And the overall difference in texture choice. So, I want to be a little more in depth about IMAX Sakura and what makes it so great, what I notice about it, what might be extrapolated towards later map projects. First of all, consider setting. This is a pretty solitary room with lots of ambient sounds going on, both constant and random, as we might have heard by what I believe is, I guess, the roar of the rack and cactor. And then we have this little liquid belt here, which is a theme, I think, whose significance becomes more apparent later on in the map. It kind of shows the interconnectedness of the whole ship. To a degree, I'm operating by memory or abstraction of the original level, texture-wise. Can I destroy these? I guess not. Thought I'd be able to shatter them like you can a lot of the lights. But it looks like this would be about half a world unit, or 1/4 of it rather. So you see a lot of subdivision of world unit fractions and the patterning of structures and textures for that matter. Of course, if you remember how the original IMAX Sakura was made, the textures were given a different, I guess, meaning or pattern depending on how big of a wall or floor they were put on. So here we would have the white light textures. Another thing that's interesting about this level is that it starts off having a fairly linear progression, although you don't necessarily know it right away because there are all these pods, if you will. These little pools of liquid. Only one of which actually leads anywhere. And then down here, we see a couple of beams. There's also a bit of a fractal aspect to some of these rooms in that, the wider room might be totally asymmetrical and of a different shape that isn't reducible to the basic geometric shapes. But then within that you get patterns that are the opposite, and that might proceed in linear fashion. So keeping that contrast within the space of a room really helps give that room character. And then of course we have these lights, which also depend on how the mapper decides to basically fill out a room, with lines and filling. And of course, that also means that to be mindful of what texture to choose for how big of a wall or wall sector. I also like the little flickering. Here again, we have a kind of recurring visual pattern of this little dent in here, the lights, but it's not repeated in a totally linear fashion as far as what direction it's repeated in. It's spread out across a asymmetrical, non-linear room, basically, or section, sector, however you want to call it. Obviously, I'm being a bit loose and liberal with the definition of that, since anyone who's been familiar with Wayland or Forge or map making for Marathon in general knows that sectors, what constitutes a sector or room is a lot more specific than what I'm talking about. We arguably just by going down this hallway would go through many different sectors or rooms or the like. Here's another thing, the sense of connectivity, although this is more immediate than what's signified with, I guess maybe not more immediate than what's signified with the liquid, since we already get deep into liquid here. But in the case of a liquid, it's something we encounter more throughout the ship, whereas this is an instance of something that is kind of foreshadowed, but that we encounter almost immediately because it's mainly in enemies and just the specific design of that room. So go through here. It's kind of linear. Then here we have another room that's designed similarly pattern-wise, I would argue, in some ways to the opening room that we started in. But, there's less of a solitary feeling because of what we've gone through to get there, and that we know more of what the level is about, even though to a newcomer you don't really know quite what you're getting into until you get through this teleporter. And there's a certain charm in that, given that just given that you can't really see all that you're going to be dealing with, and that in turn makes that little foreshadowing we had earlier of the sight into the room with enemies, a bit more powerful. People who don't know this level yet don't realize, what a big and kind of symmetrical but kind of asymmetrical level they're dealing with, in the sense that there's a distinct pattern, but enough variation within it. So it's almost like an outgoing fractal of what we encounter in that first room. Another example of that wall size and lighting choice that I talked about. And it's cool that this shines directly onto the part of the terminal in a way. So let's read this terminal again. The trizeme plummets, yawning, towards the sun's core, heart, and the fiery prison of the Rakencactor's doubt where something overthought unravel. The power grid activators located here on the outer ring, which you must access in order to bring the station online. That's right. The grid needs the Eero Farcast pattern chips to function. The four have recovered one here, in the main hangar for the station, and are readying it for transport to the Cafiva. So I'll have to revisit the broader context of Infinity's story and Marathon's story in general to really, parse out the significance of all that. But I think that is a good example of, for one thing, making the player a bit more mindful and self-training about keeping in mind where in a map a specific objective is in the form of an object or slot or something like that, but also just giving more lore behind what is essentially one of a few of the same types of missions that you encounter in Marathon. And it provides some balance in the sense of giving you something that you have to do, where if they hadn't done that, it might be much less clear. You might be kind of wandering around, not looking as mindfully for stuff. So it goes to show how there's the right balance between throwing players a bone and still giving them something that they have to really look for. If you just make it too challenging, too ridiculously difficult, or too easy, then it doesn't actually edify them. And here, it's interesting because this is really only scenically significant, at least as I have experienced this level so far. Maybe I'll find there's more to it than I thought if, once I have explored it more thoroughly than I ever have before and given it more commentary. But maybe that depends on me finding some really strange secret. And I'll probably have to look in Wayland for that anyway. Oh, I didn't see that simulacrum there. I was too distracted. There's another one back here. The thing of it is quite fitting that they would make this version of a level, the colorscape one, with those wacky simulacrums. Anyway, right away here, we get an example of how, if you're able to keep in mind the kind of moment-to-moment, progressive experience of a player, you give them a point where there are many different places to go. So you have an elevator, kind of mysterious pathway, little secret doors like this. One that seems remote, you'd have to really work to get up to, and then down here a more open area with different pathways there as well. So already I'm kind of getting into the mindset of if I were playing this for the first time, where would I go? Let's look at the overall structural design of just this room. There's a distinct pattern to it in that, there's a kind of diagonal slant, and knowing what I already know about the map, that's in service of a kind of rounding semi-symmetry, if you will, to the level. But at the same time, within this room, the other side is a bit more straight, involves more right angles, or what diagonal lines there are very slight, and for I guess a sense of purpose, like seeing a switch, or just for immersion's sake. Also, this really reminds you to think about placing scenic objects in your map, which a lot of people, including myself, tend to forget to do, but which is made more apparent when you have what are regular scenic objects made for the original Infinity, deep within these goofy colorscape textures. It really makes you notice them more because they seem so out of place in a funny way. And of course, these forks in the road, they aren't necessarily symmetrically patterned either, but they're still positioned in such a way that you could easily see the different paths you have just by looking in or entering, at least from the first point from which you can enter. And even if the level itself in its overall structure might be a bit symmetrical or open-ended, in a way that you can parse out pretty quickly as you explore it, it is also cool how, whether it was really deliberate or not, the actual experience of playing this level was a bit of a blossoming experience, because we started off in a small room with a linear pathway to progress, and things accelerated to now where we have like 5-6 different places to go from this room that we teleported into, as well as many different possible ways to get up to them, such as explosive hopping up here, going down an elevator, opening a switch or not, opening a door or not, going down a path that's pretty clear in its destination or not. Okay, let's deal with these real quick. Anyway, I actually don't want to go beyond this level. Hey, what happened to the color textures? I actually don't want to go beyond this level and talking about, going beyond this video and talking about this level. So I'm going to pick up the pace a bit more, but still be a bit more thorough, and then offer loose thoughts as I basically wander around really quick. I like that there's an ongoing, contrast as you travel along between, these small, cramped places and those big open areas. The different ways that you can proceed among them, even in something just as simple as going up or downstairs. Like two more or less parallel pathways that have a different character about them and lead to different places. Now that I got the full shields, I'm going to do that rocket trip. Alright, collect the chip. Maybe at this point I can make this into a bit of a video series where I go through a level and just talk about the way that it's designed. Maybe I wouldn't even necessarily play through it like normal, at least not if I've already played through it the regular way before, but instead I would look at it in the Vasara plugin, which is basically a visual mode for ALF1, or I would even use the Nature's Peace script, which disables all enemies, all monsters, all creatures, so you're just wandering around by yourself, kind of like in that one level in this pack, this scenario where there was no one around and it was all foggy and dreary looking. This is another thing I like about this level is that you have different elevation levels that are kind of vertically parallel, but still very connected, and so you kind of wander through the same area twice, but not in the same way or with the same challenges you might encounter. Like, I didn't really encounter many enemies up there in these pathways, these bridges, but theoretically you could have ambush enemies inside these hallways that you wouldn't see from out here. Maybe you would alert some enemies from up there that would drop down on you while you were unsuspecting or had passed a certain point. It's also cool because it has an assembly line quality in that these motifs, they kind of repeat at kind of regular intervals, but for one thing, it's not in a totally straight line. It's in kind of a curve where you're going in a roundabout way, and along that path, different structural motifs repeat at different rates. So that's why I call it like an assembly line. At least that's the idea that I get. It's not that much, but there are patterns that way. Brings to the fact that, like, here, this top right part of the map, compared to the top left one. Oh. What I was saying was that, these rooms, they appear the same in the overhead in Wayland, but they have different little structures within them, and the overall elevation patterns of both are different. And that helps give the map a distinct pattern where everywhere you go it's something new, but you could still feel a sense of place all throughout. That's not getting into the part that for the past several levels I haven't really bothered with, which is the central area, where the structure gets more or less simpler as you delve into the core. It's a place where you can decide which quadrant of the map to go to, so to speak. And once again, if you don't know the level already and how to get through it, then it gives that new sense of mystery, where you have 4 different places to go to, or you can go up this elevator. So I need to get a drink of water real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry again for my seeming chronic throat issues. So here again, we can see on the overhead map, it's pretty rounded, but it's like the more you explore it, the more you realize, what's exactly different about it. And yeah, it's like you're going over different forms of the same thing, which is maybe in a weird way part of why this scenario was made, because that's what the levels are themselves, little minute variations on the same thing. Okay. Going to go ahead and go down here. Also, like, if there are multiple routes to the same place, it's very crucial place with the crucial objective from both more the outside area and the inside area. And then this big open view into space. With all these boxes and the antennas and the pods like that. Looks like it wasn't fast enough to grab that, so it's not as easy now. But we got it this time. Oops. Oh, shit. It's weird because I felt like I was looking around looking for that exploded bob in there, but I couldn't see it. Maybe somehow it was falling down. But I thought it was already inside. Anyway. Here's another example we see along the hallway to the more outer edge of the map. I guess that's a view of the lower or higher level. But we see that the central area isn't totally symmetrical at all. It's like the more you look, the more you find that it's similar, the more you find that it's not, and back and forth like that. One thing that it's harder to tell when playing in a game is that even in the overhead map, you don't actually see the lines, of course, that the designer drew to make these levels. Of course, to an extent, you can see it, in the parts that are distinct, which is more important anyway. And the point of a design So like if they put a bunch of squares or triangles here to fill this out, you wouldn't see it in the overhead map. So it's not really important because it seems all they intended to do was just this, regular flat floor. And one thing that keeps these different quadrants consistent and memorable, as like a motif, is just that no matter how different they get, the means of transportation, be it teleporters or elevators or the like, they tend to be pretty identical. Which is easy when the transportation location is small. There's less detail you can fit in there, especially if you want to make sure the level runs properly. But this level is also a bit of a reminder of how, in the early days with the original trilogy and maps made for Marathon at the time, partly as a result of the limits of the original Marathon engine compared to Aleph 1 today, and also a result of, I guess, different general approaches and attitudes about level design, the rooms are a bit more discrete and closed off from one another. Obviously, they're connected, sometimes without doors. Most of the time, it seems without doors, but you can see a good amount of negative space. Whereas certainly now, I think especially in net maps, you'll notice that like if you look overhead, the maps are like one big blob for the most part, just like a mess of lines and sectors, and that's not a problem because the levels themselves are good and they function properly. But there's something I think also to be said for just places that are very distinct, or I should say discrete, very close off of one another, where it's like you really are going through different distinct rooms, even if they don't have a door connecting them, and it feels like a constant travel through everything. Here's another pattern of broken symmetry, where as opposed to the, I guess, top two quadrants of a level that deal more in the same types of structure, but with a different design within them, so to speak. The bottom two are more separate to the point of the left side, I think, having disproportionately larger size. Not just in the, I guess, width of the places drawn, but just in the sense that, where did all this come from? But in the sense that it's like one big room instead of several small rooms collected together. Sorry, I think I'll need to go more in depth with this in the future, maybe in a different series. Starting to run out of my time for today. I do want to finish up Marathon Rack and Cactor and move on to other things. But I will say that I did like this scenario. This made me think about certain things about Marathon, particularly the original, that I hadn't thought about before, or at least in a while. Because come to think of it, I could probably comment on this level for days and days, research it, break it down, use it as a template for me to follow for my own maps, but in such a way that, even though it would have the same essential qualities, you hopefully would not know that it was based on that if I hadn't told you. I will definitely say real quick that I have always liked this part of it. This is definitely a technique I've also noticed and been conscious of since looking over levels in Marathon Travel. In the sense of having, pretty basic shaped sectors, in a pattern, but editing the floor and ceiling elevation relative to, the average for a room or a general section. and even having little beams, if you will, made of negative space, kind of connect everything, give everything more definition, and also kind of helps mark out different areas, like different, imagine thresholds of a level. Like, if you put a beam and some edited elevation here, even if it doesn't really affect the I guess, gameplay of navigating the area, it gives you an idea of, okay, this is where things get darker or, more complex. This is where, you can find, view, terminal, save pattern, shield, etc. That helps you be both creatively abstract and also immersive, in the sense of giving the player a sense of setting, even if it's a totally unrealistic place, to where you can imagine it being a place in like a different dimension or far in the future or something. Even with the structural limits of the engine, where it's boxier than certainly what we see in modern games, for better or worse. All right, I think I've commented enough on this. Who knows how logical or sensical it even was. And of course, I didn't even explore everything. I just kept on blabbing about so much. But again, I am interested in possibly having like a little series where I do these sorts of videos. You know me, I can be very abstract and esoteric in what I'm saying. So this may come off as a totally obscure word salad, as my writings have often been accused of being. But I still consider it well worth it. Let me know what you think about IMAX Secure in the comments section, what you have gathered from it, what makes it great, or, as your opinion might be, what makes it not so great. Read the terminal here one more time. You've done it. The Jaharo station is online, and we're wrapping the Nova in his containment fields. The creature or creatures Siboth fears are either dormant or a myth. We've seen nothing to account for his terror. This makes me want to brush up more on astronomy and, all the details and ramifications of things like novas. And what might be possible in the future, what we might potentially deal with when it comes to a lot of these things as we hopefully get more out into space as a species. But the Svitker have routed the four, capturing their flagship and forcing their High Admiral to flee the system, what little there is left of it. The Svit are preparing to bid farewell to their beloved home forever, as the sun collapses in on itself and the lonely marshes fade into the deepening twilight. The newly chosen elders of the remaining Svit are capturing as many of the Flicta creatures and the other native life as is feasible before they must leave with Kalia. They are hopeful, though, and with our help will carve another paradise out of the void. It's sending me back here. Alright. Well, that's it. That was all of Marathon Ratkencactor. Thanks for watching. I have a few ideas for what I might show next, but I won't give them away in case I change my mind or find something new, or perhaps even see something newly uploaded or shared that I feel compelled to play through first. Until then, thanks for watching. See you next time.